Hello, and welcome to the Underpaid Gamers Podcast. My name is Tony. We are the official podcast of underpaidgamers.com. My friend and colleague Justin is not with us today. He is off fighting the mounties in Canada. Well, technically he's in Michigan, but there's hardly a difference between Michigan and Canada, so it's all lumped together. Today I have some news for you. We have news of a Daredevil PS2 game that was canceled that was recently shown the light. I have some Star Trek news. The trailer just came out. And some other stuff. So stay tuned, and I'll be right with you. And welcome back. Wasn't that an amazing theme song? Thanks, Justin. All the way up there in Canada. Like I said, my name is Tony. I am part of the Underpaid Gamers. If you want to hear, see, listen, touch more of us, you can find all those things at underpaidgamers.com. You can go to YouTube and search for Underpaid Gamers. You can go to Twitter and follow us at UP Gamers Podcast. You don't even have to follow us. You can just tweet at us and say nice things or say mean things. I don't care. I just want someone to talk to, okay? Okay. Anyway, Hannibal Buress is joining Spider-Man Homecoming. This is another comedian, which is very interesting. This is obviously going to be a comedy, or more of a comedy than other Marvel movies. So, like, Hannibal Buress is a comedian. Donnie Glover is in a whole bunch of comedy roles. Tom Holland is too young to really have a whole bunch of history doing things, but he was really good in Civil War as a comedian, as, like, the joke teller. So it looks like there's just going to be quick-firing jokes back and forth the whole time. Or maybe I'm just looking too much into this. Maybe Hannibal Buress and Donnie Glover don't want to be the comedian in this, but I feel like Spider-Man, other than Daredevil, I feel like Spider-Man would probably be the best movie for a comedian, just because of stuff like that happens, of all the wit that happens from Spider-Man. However, normally it is just Spider-Man's wit. It's not necessarily like anybody else's wit. So we'll see what happens. I don't know what to think. Still super psyched for it. So I just wanted to get the Spider-Man news out of the way first. Well, some of the Spider-Man news. Justice League has been announced that it will be releasing on November 17th, 2017, and it's going to be a standalone film. So there's no sequel directly to Justice League. They put out a plot synopsis, but I've really just been burnt out on DC movies since Batman v Superman, which I realized was like a couple months ago, but still. I think it's essentially Batman's just looking for all these people, Green Lantern, The Flash, Aquaman, and he obviously knows Wonder Woman from Batman v Superman, so they're going to put it all together. Even on the poster, it shows Superman, so very obviously he's back from the dead. I mean, that happened in the end of Batman v Superman, where like the rocks raised off of his coffin, which is interesting. Like, I've never seen... The only time I've ever seen rocks being able to move by, like, someone's pure power would be Dragon Ball Z. I've never actually seen, like, Superman do that, so I don't know if Superman is a Super Saiyan. I think that would turn a lot of people off, and I also think that probably Goku or Vegeta could probably beat Superman, but I also hate Superman, so just keep that in mind. But also Goku and Vegeta are awesome. So, next. Marvel has unannounced plans for console games. They aren't saying what they are, but they have said that they do have plans. Their Marvel vs. Capcom contract expired in 2014, so that doesn't mean you won't see another one. It just means that that's why we haven't seen one in 2 years. As I was playing Smite with my friends, we discussed how awesome it would be if Marvel made a MOBA, a multiplayer online battle arena game, very much like Smite or Dota 2 or League of Legends. That would be so sick to have like a whole list of Marvel heroes and villains just go at it like that, because like Smite is all like mythological gods, so that's really cool. But if you had like Spider-Man or Dr. Octopus or Magneto, Doctor Doom, Mr. Fantastic, like all these things, I just think like that would be the sickest thing. So hopefully it's going to be a MOBA. Hopefully they're making something like that. That'd be so sick. Over the past weekend, CEO Smash competition in Orlando, at the Wyndham Resort in Orlando, Another big Smash tournament. The winner of Melee was Hungrybox. He took it over Mewtwo King. And Anti wins Smash 4. I don't watch Smash 4, so I apologize if I'm mispronouncing Anti's name. And then now, more Smash news. Genesis 4 gets more Melee participants in 1 hour than all of Genesis 3. Or all of Genesis 1, sorry. So they're in the first hour of being able to register for Genesis 4, they already capped the limit that they had for Genesis 1 back years ago. So that's incredible that Smash is getting so much more popular. As I've said numerous times on this podcast, Smash is my favorite esport. So I'm always looking for cool things like that. Bryan Cranston, Mr. Walter White, Mr. Hal from Malcolm in the Middle, has joined the new Power Rangers movie as Zordon. The poster revealed, and he said himself. So that is interesting. I don't know. Bryan Cranston became so popular because of Breaking Bad. And, he was good. He was very good. He's one of the best characters in Malcolm in the Middle. But at the same time, he rose to stardom from Breaking Bad. And I don't know if necessarily... if he's a fantastic actor in that. But I don't know if that's just kind of obviously he can do that caliber. But at the same time, he did stupid movies like Godzilla. And now it looks like Power Rangers. So... I don't know. Bryan Cranston just does the things he wants. He's probably just a good villain. I don't know what to think of Bryan Cranston. I like the guy, but he seems to do these weird movies, a la Godzilla and Power Rangers. So we'll see what happens. I'm not going to see the Power Rangers movie for 2 reasons. 1, does not look interesting. And 2, I was not allowed to watch Power Rangers when I was a kid, so I have no nostalgia to watch more Power Rangers. So that one's just going to go right by me. Don't really care. Destiny and the Mega Bloks team have teamed up to make avatars in real life that you can buy that are very Mega Blocky. Like the small little figurines with the rounded heads that you can put on things. But I think they're really just selling the figures of Destiny. I think you can alter their colors. Think of a Lego man, how you can take off his pants and take off his legs and take off his torso, take off his head. You can interchange that with other things. I think Mega Bloks is doing that with Destiny, except for your Destiny, your Hunter, or your Warlock, or your Titan, you can mix and match colors. It would be super weird to put a Titan head on a Warlock body and an Assassin's legs, but I bet you could do that too. Fallout New Vegas is now backwards compatible on Xbox One, so anybody that has an Xbox One and would like to play a Bethesda game that you have not played in a while, Fallout New Vegas is all up for grabs. 2 things on Star Trek news. I kind of spoiled one of them in the intro, is that the Star Trek Beyond Trailer 3 was just released 3 hours ago. I watched it. Doesn't make any sense to me. I didn't watch Star Trek. I've never watched Star Trek before. But... people do like it. Rihanna is in this trailer, her music, not the actual actress, as far as I know. It shows some ships blowing up and some fight scenes in the space, and the captain saying things like, "I'm never getting on this ship ever again," and "I wish I was more like my dad," stuff like that. So we'll see that. But other news in Star Trek front, on The Last Frontier, is Build-A-Bear has signed a contract with Star Trek, and now you can go to any Build-A-Bear and make a Star Trek bear. So get that for loved ones, or get that for yourself. It's whatever. With July right around the corner, Netflix has released the things that are leaving, and the things that are staying, and the things that are coming. So the most things that are leaving, or the biggest things that are leaving, it's your last chance to watch 2001: A Space Odyssey, A Clockwork Orange, The Perfect Storm, and a whole slew of Star Trek movies. I am actually halfway through The Perfect Storm and been that way for a month, so maybe I'll finish that. But notable things that are coming in July, specifically on July 1st, is Back to the Future 1, 2, and 3, Batman the Movie, Beverly Hills Cop 1 and 2, Big Trouble in Little China, Blade 2, Cheaper by the Dozen, haven't seen that in a while, Hey Arnold the Movie, what's up? The Italian Job, Lethal Weapon 1 through 4, The Longest Yard with Adam Sandler, which is actually quite funny. Mean Girls, for all you sorority girls out there. Raiders of the Lost Ark Season 2. Okay, that's not what I thought it was. You fooled me. Okay, that's all I can find. That's all I can find that's important. So if you're looking for any things like that, I mean, there's some good things in there. I will definitely watch Back to the Future 1, 2, and 3. I saw a clip of it on TBS the other day, and I'm like, I wish I could watch all of this because it's so good, but I can't. Okay, so back to game news. If you've been playing Overwatch like I have been, and you're playing on console, the turrets from Torbjorn, who I will now call Trobolone because that's easier to say, are incredibly powerful. So much so that Blizzard has announced that in mid to late July, they are going to reduce the turret's effectiveness of Toblerone by 30%. So they'll do 30% less damage. So for us console players, that's going to be quite a sigh of relief. They are not changing anything on PC, so just keep that in mind. News for Star Wars Rogue One. Darth Vader's original voice actor, James Earl Jones, is coming back to reprise his role as the Dark Knight. Wait, that's not right. As Darth Vader. Which could also be the Dark Knight. I mean, clearly Star Wars and Darth Vader takes things, well, I guess it takes things from, like, samurai past. So I guess they're not samurai knights. So I don't know. Maybe he's a dark samurai. Who knows? Anyways, James Earl Jones is coming back. They said that Darth Vader is not going to be a huge presence in this movie, but when he's there, you'll definitely like feel his presence. So that's very interesting. When I saw that first trailer for Rogue One, I was not blown away. I was actually I got that Star Wars fatigue. But now, just hearing them talk about it, I'm getting a little bit more excited. So we'll see what happens. That's coming out in December of 2016. The creators behind Mega Man released a new game, Mighty Number 9, after years and years of delays. And this was a crowd-sourced Kickstarter. So people that donated to it, that funded to it, every backer on Kickstarter. So that's how the game got funded. But now, the Mighty Number 9 in-credits scene, like the list of everybody, is over 4 hours long. Over 4 hours long! Because it lists every single person that backed the Kickstarter. Which is insane. Like, obviously you want to do that, and props to them, but like, think if your name was like at the 2 hour mark. Not even at the 4 hour mark, but at like the 2 hour mark. You have to sit there for 2 hours. Now, obviously, I don't know. There's this, like, if there's not a way to skip in credits in a video game, I get ticked. I don't get ticked, but I walk away. I do something else, and I come back. And what I hate the most is when there's like a cutscene after the end of credits for video games, because I just sat there for a half hour and watched these credits of people that I don't know. It's not like movies where I know the actors in it. I'm like, oh, I recognize that person. I'm going to wait to the credits and find out who that was. It's not like I'm playing a game. I'm like, oh, I recognize that cup design. I'm going to wait to the credits and see who designed that cup. It's just, and game developers are important, but at the same time, like, I'm not watching 4 hours of this. It's just ridiculous. Speaking of credits and movies, there's going to be an R-rated Batman v Superman cut that will be in 12 theaters across the U.S. for one night only. It's going to be June 27 and only 12 theaters. So that's today. So if you didn't know about that until today, you're probably out of luck. I guess the R-rated Batman v Superman will be longer than the original, and will have probably explain things better. So if you love Batman v Superman and you want to see more and you want to give them more money, I don't think they deserve, go and watch it in theaters. As we talked about last week with their E3 episode, Zelda the Breath of the Wild, the producers said that he would like to make a Zelda multiplayer game next. After this current game, he would want to make a multiplayer game, which is, it's happened before. There's been some handheld things where you had to have like other people to play Zelda. So when I heard of like a multiplayer Zelda, I immediately thought of like a MOBA or a Lord of the Rings Conquest type thing, or like a obviously it's not gonna be a Call of Duty, but that's kind of what I pictured. That's not what he's talking about. I guess he's just talking about more like people being able to jump in and jump out of your game. I guess more similar to Destiny or Watch Dogs. So we'll see what happens there. Again, I've never been on the Zelda gaming thing. So do whatever you want to do. Nintendo has a knack for keeping their franchises alive, and what I mean by that is they only build games for their franchises. There's not a lot of third-party support. So we'll see what happens with that. But, I mean, Nintendo's still around, so that's exciting. What else? There's going to be an animated SpiderMan movie coming December 2018, so 1.5 years. It's written by Phil Lord. If you know who that is, he is also the writer / director / producer behind the Lego Movie, the Jump Street movies, so 21 Jump Street, 22 Jump Street, and also he's going to be in the Han Solo film. He's like writing that. So this guy has some writing chops. So it's very interesting to see a Spider-Man movie that's going to be animated in 2018. In December of 2018. So obviously this won't tie in with the overarching MCU, but we get more Spider-Man, so that's cool. Activision CEO has gone on record and said that they aren't going to change a single thing about Infinite Warfare despite the fan reaction, which is probably a good thing. As we talked about before, Infinite Warfare is the most disliked trailer of all time for video games. But at the same time, it's also the most liked Call of Duty trailer. And that's not saying that there's been disliked Call of Duty trailers. It's just, it's the most of both worlds. So there's been like... So, Black Ops 2. Before Infinite Warfare, Black Ops 2 was the most disliked trailer of Call of Duty. So, what does that mean? It doesn't really mean anything. It means that people jumped on the bandwagon of liking Battlefield 1 and disliking Infinite Warfare. So, it's probably good on them to not change anything. Obviously, it's too far into their development cycle to be able to change anything, I would say, as it's coming out in a couple months. So we'll see what happens. Again, the multiplayer reveal is going to be at COD XP, which is in September, which is a month before the game releases. So we'll see what happens. I just found out that there is a collectible card game for your mobile device. It'll be featuring Family Guy, Bob's Burgers, Futurama, King of the Hill, and American Dad. So think Hearthstone, think Gwent from The Witcher. Just replace all those characters with Family Guy characters, Bob's Burgers, Futurama, King of the Hill, and American Dad. So, I don't know. That's kind of interesting. There's already a Simpsons game produced by EA on the handhelds, similar to this. So, I don't know. I don't watch... I used to watch some of those shows when I was younger. Obviously, most of those shows have gone on forever and ever, so I don't watch them so much anymore. Another thing I just found out, although it was announced like in December, was that there's more Fast and Furious movies on the way. 2017 is obviously when Fast and Furious 8 is going to come out. That we knew about. They've been filming. It's almost... Well, it's not almost ready. It's still an hour... It's still a year away. But that's not a surprise to me. However, Vin Diesel did say that they're coming out with at least 2 more movies. One in 2019 and one in 2021. As well as spin-offs. They are currently in the idea / writing stages of spin-offs, which is kind of good. I like to think of Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift as a spin-off for Han, as opposed to like canon for the movie. So if I was going to re-release the movies, it would be Fast and Furious 1, 2, 4, and have 3 as a spin-off. So have Tokyo Drift as a spin-off, because in 1 you get Paul Walker and Vin Diesel, Brian and Dom. In 2 you get Brian and you get what is his name? Dominic? No, not Dominic. I can't remember his name. It's the guy that drives the Corvette. Not the Corvette, the convertible. Roman Pierce. You get Brian and Roman Pierce in number 2. In 3, you get Han, which comes back. And then 4, they kind of all together. Also, you get Letty and the other girl. I can't remember her name. So I much rather consider Tokyo Drift as a spin-off for Han. It's not necessarily his story, but he's a big role in that movie. So I assume that in future spin-offs, it'll be their roles more. Like, it'll be like focus on them specifically. Now, I really don't want to see a Vin Diesel solo movie for Fast and the Furious. Like, I do think he's the main character of the Fast and the Furious movies, but I think we've seen enough of him. I don't want to see another one. Obviously, the Fast and the Furious movies have a lot of Hollywood talent in them. Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, Michelle Rodriguez, Vin Diesel, and then also Jason Statham. So it's very interesting to see. It's a movie franchise that kind of dipped down, and then number 5, they like exploded, and they've been getting popular ever since. So we'll see what happens to that. Also, there is Titan Books is publishing a Mass Effect stories, like actual books, and it is it's to bridge the gap between Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 and Andromeda, because they're not necessarily connected. So these books can be considered as a prologue and an epilogue. So an epilogue to 3 and a prologue to Andromeda. Kind of, like I said, it bridges the gap. So I assume in Andromeda there might be references to the old times, but it's not going to be like your decisions in Mass Effect 3 are not going to affect what happens in Andromeda. So it's essentially a whole new story. Just consider it a whole new story. Anyway, years ago, in 2002, there was a Daredevil game for PlayStation 2 that was canceled. And for whatever reason, although there was articles written on it back then, by IGN, GameSpot, things like that, things that are around, for whatever reason, there's been a resurgence of articles based on this game. Just recently, like this past week. So years later. So whatever that means, I don't know. Maybe Marvel and Disney are trying to see if there's interest in a Daredevil game. I don't know. I don't really know. But I do have a lot of details about what the Daredevil game for the PS2 was. I have a characters list, a story, a plot list. So let's go through that really quickly. I'm going to take a drink of water. There's going to be a long pause. Just deal with it. All right. So the publisher, the producer behind this canceled Daredevil game. Keep in mind, this is like during the time of the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. So this was in development around the same time as the Spider-Man 1 video game that tied in with the SpiderMan movie. However, the Spider-Man 1 video game was released before this Daredevil game was supposed to be released. So that's the time frame we're looking at. The 5,000 Foot Incorporated is the producer behind this game. This is what they wanted to make. This is kind of their baby. They started with 12 people working on it. It was a small game. They made a demo. They showed it to some people. And then Encore was the publisher, and they decided, you know what, I kind of want to get on this. I want to produce this. I want to publish this. Here's 50 more people. So they went from 12 to 62. So obviously a big resurgence. Also, I think by the end of the life cycle, they had it was like a $5 million game. So they put a lot of time, a lot of people, a lot of effort into this. As the game got larger and larger, Marvel took note of it. Obviously, it has their characters in it, and Sony took note in it, and Microsoft took note in it. Now, this game was going to come out for PS2, so obviously you have to deal with Sony. And this game has Marvel characters, so you obviously have to deal with Marvel. But it was also scheduled to be released on PC and Xbox, so Microsoft is going to be there for both of those. Now, essentially what happened was Marvel wanted things to happen one way, and Sony wanted things to happen the other way, and Microsoft's kind of just laid back. They're just kind of like, do whatever you want, just get us the game. So Microsoft didn't have a big pull in this, but there was a big disagreement between Marvel and Sony. Essentially, Marvel was saying, I want you to stay true to the canon, and Sony was saying, let's use some features in games that are really popular right now, as well as tie this into the Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck that's coming out. Because that has not came out yet. So Daredevil is an unblemished hero, because that movie has not came out yet. But there's some gameplay for it. There's a trailer, and I watched some of it, and I made some notes. So if you're comparing this to the Spider-Man game, or you're comparing this to the Spider-Man 2 game, which I think is very adequate, because they came out at the same time. They're very similar. I mean, obviously, they're superhero games. They're third-person games. Daredevil in this game was more of a brawler and less of an acrobat. So if you see Spider-Man games, you see him, like, jumping from, like, bouncing off walls, like, kicking somebody, doing a back handspring, and, like, punching somebody else. Daredevil is more of, like, a bare-knuckle brawler, so he's up in your face and he's punching you. I mean, obviously, he is a boxer. Like, that's what his dad, that's his whole premise. So he's not rolling around and jumping over people. He's just, like, he's punching your lights out. So there's not a lot of jumps and flips from Daredevil, which was nice to see because I didn't expect that. I didn't even think about that when I first started watching the trailer until I saw like a Daredevil trailer on one side and a Marvel trailer on the other, or in a Spider-Man trailer on the other, and it showed like they didn't even say, but it showed the differences in their fight style. I'm like, that's so cool that you can put a characteristic. I mean, obviously this happens, but it's so cool to see someone's character in the way they fight. So again, Daredevil is more of a brawler, whereas Spider-Man is more of a jumps and flips kind of guy. Obviously, Daredevil's main weapon, the Billy Club, is in this game. It's used for combat. You can throw it at people. You can obviously throw it and use it as a projectile, but he also uses it to swing around the city. So it has that grappling hook. And what was interesting is that although the Spider-Man game was released in the middle of development for the Daredevil game, if that makes sense, so Spider-Man was done while Daredevil was still in the middle, Spider-Man's web swinging, he wouldn't connect to anything. Like he would, specifically in the first Spider-Man. I know it changed for Spider-Man 2, but in the first Spider-Man, his webs wouldn't connect to anything. It would like connect to the clouds. It would just shoot straight up. But in the Daredevil game that was made at the same time, his grappling hook would actually connect to buildings. It would connect to streetlights. So it's very interesting that two games made at the same time, one had a better mechanic, and it's weird that it's Daredevil and not Spider-Man, because you would assume that the Activision making Spider-Man would think of that. But I guess they didn't. Obviously, they fixed that for Spider-Man 2, and I think maybe they saw it in the Daredevil trailer, and they think, oh, okay, so that is doable. So it's interesting that that happened. So the Daredevil game was a third-person open-world action game. Just picture that. So, I mean, I'm comparing it a lot to the Spider-Man game because they're very similar. So just like close your eyes and picture Spider-Man 1 or Spider-Man 2 and just change Spider-Man's skin to like his outfit to Daredevil's skin. And then like change it from like daytime to nighttime. Because Daredevil like only operates at night. However, there were some things that separated it. Obviously, the grappling hook was different from the web swinging because it actually connected to buildings. You could like jump on streetlights, which I remember in Spider-Man 1, you would be web swinging above the city, and there'd be like fog under you. And if you fell into the fog, you wouldn't land on the city streets; you just die automatically. So in this essence, Daredevil is a better open world game than Spider-Man was. However, they did change some things, and this is the cause of a lot of tension between Marvel and Sony, where Sony wanted to use very popular game mechanics from other games. Specifically, think of the grinding feature from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, where you can obviously grind on rails. They wanted to implement that into Daredevil, where he could grind on, with his boots, he could, not a skateboard, with his boots, he could grind on telephone poles, telephone like lines, and also like the edges of buildings. And when you hear that, you're like, that's stupid. Like, that looks so dumb. However, once I saw it in action, I'm like, that's sick. That looks so cool. Because he just goes from, he traverses the buildings so much quicker when he can grind on these things. Now, obviously, that's not canon, and Marvel's like, whoa, hold the phone. Daredevil has never once done that in any comic book. Why are you adding this? And Sony's like, because it's super popular. So both of them are like pushing at 5,000 foot incorporated, and they're saying, Marvel's saying, don't do the grind feature. That's not a Daredevil mechanic. And Sony's like, do the grind feature because it's going to sell copies. So 5,000 foot has to decide to go with Marvel or to go with Sony. It kind of has to please both parent companies that they're arguing, that they're both arguing. However, way before the Batman Arkham games, there was a radar vision, and this was implemented in Daredevil in PS2. Like, that's so crazy. It's almost essentially the exact same thing that you see in the detective mode from Batman Arkham, the Arkham trilogy, any of them, where like it was what I called his world on fire vision. So it's a third-person game. You click the button and it goes into radar vision, and it's almost exactly like detective mode. You can see people's footsteps. You can hear people's heartbeats. You can gauge their fear level. So it's so interesting that was on the books way back in like 2001. If this game were to come out, if this game actually came out, it did not. If this game came out in like 2003 when it was supposed to, people would probably say Arkham stole this mechanic from that old Daredevil game, but it never came out. So maybe they did steal this from the old Daredevil game. However, it's such an interesting feature, and I think it fits both characters. If a Daredevil game came out now, I think people would say, well, Daredevil just copied that mechanic from Arkham. I guess I'll get into my thoughts on if a Daredevil game came out after we talk about everything. But there are some very interesting characters in this game. In the trailer, you see Elektra, you see Bullseye, and you see Kingpin. There's also characters slated for this game. There's going to be Stick. If you've seen the Daredevil, if you've read the comics, if you've seen the Daredevil shows on Netflix, you know most of these characters. So Elektra, Bullseye, and Kingpin. There's also Stick, Ben Urich, which is the reporter, and Josie, who has the pub. It was said that the Punisher was going to have an extended cameo, as well as Black Widow, which is interesting. And some of the villains include the Sewer King, the Hand Ninjas Clan, Silvermane, and Hammerhead. So again, I have to mention that Hammerhead's my favorite villain. So it was just packed full of comic book characters, which is so cool. And like I said before, Spider-Man 1 was released mid-development, in the middle of the development for this Daredevil game. But Spider-Man 1 was linear, and this Daredevil game was supposed to be open world. So it's already like expanding on what Spider-Man did, which is very interesting. So the difference between Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2 is that Spider-Man 1 was open world. The web swinging would just connect to the clouds. If you fell below a certain altitude, you died. Spider-Man 2, open world. The web swinging was momentum based and connected to things. You could be on the city streets or on top of the Empire State Building. Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2, there's a lot of differences between. But it looks like Daredevil would have been like the middle, like right in the middle. Like it would have had what Spider-Man 2 had before Spider-Man 2 had it. Which is very interesting because people consider, and I'm one of the people that consider Spider-Man 2 as the greatest Spider-Man game ever made so far. And it did a lot for superhero games. But it looks like Daredevil was doing things behind the scenes before Spider-Man 2 was released. Let's see here. So, as I said before, 5,000 Foot Incorporated started with 12 employees working on this Daredevil game. And then Encore gave them 50 more employees. So, whoever was managing this had to go from 12 people to 62 people. And it just did not work. This is one of the downfalls of why this game did not come out. As well as Marvel and Sony just disagreeing on everything. Tensions were rising in the 5,000 Foot Incorporated building. And at this time in history, there's a lot of reported drug use in the Reno area, which is where this publisher is located. So a lot of the new employees had not had a lot of experience with these kind of games. So a lot of the new employees like succumb to drug abuse, like hard drugs, like narcotic drugs. Not like tobacco and alcohol, but like the hard stuff. So obviously it's hard to make a game when your employees are getting high all the time. There's a report of one of the higher ranking employees went to a meeting, but he was so high that he just like sat there and like drooled on himself the whole time and didn't answer anything. So that's hard to hear and that's hard to read. And it's even harder to see that had such a big effect on this game. And then, I mean, obviously things like that, and then that just rises tensions between everybody. So, in the end, like, there's tensions between Marvel and Sony. Sony wanted to go this way, Marvel wanted to go this way. The new employees are just D-bags and getting drunk all the time. So essentially, Marvel pulled the licensing. Marvel said, look, we have this Daredevil character, you're not standing true to the canon, so we're just not going to let you use him anymore. So Sony pushed too hard one way, and Marvel tried to push too hard the other way, and eventually you can say that Marvel won because Marvel's like, you don't have the license for this. So that's the main reason why this didn't come out, because how can you have a Daredevil-like game without Daredevil? You can make it a third party, you can make it a different person, but at the same time, like, you have to change all the villains, all this other stuff. So it just didn't come out because of that. However, I do have what the story would have been. So I assume that well, this is what I read. This is what the story was going to be. So the kingpin of crime in Devil's Kitchen has been recently assassinated. So the local gangs try to secure control. So it's all these they're ninjas, and like the Yakuza and all this other thing. They're trying to secure control of Devil's Kitchen to see who's on top. And then as well as that, Foggy Nelson has been kidnapped. So Daredevil, Matt Murdock, has to find Foggy Nelson. He has to stop all these gangs. He has to find out what happened to the Kingpin. He has to fight all these mob bosses. But as well as that, Elektra has been newly resurrected because she does that. And not only that, but she is being blamed for the assassination of Kingpin. So Daredevil has to fight all these minions. He has to rescue Foggy Nelson, and he has to clear Elektra's name, which is already a pretty compelling storyline. I think that's very interesting. But then, plot twist, spoiler alert for anybody that wants to play this game but can't because it was canceled. Kingpin was actually alive the whole time and was pulling the strings on everything. So when I first heard that, I'm like, that's such a cool story. Like, Kingpin was just watching all these other crime bosses rise and like fight each other off. So the Yakuza kills the Hand Clan, and then Daredevil takes down the Yakuza. So eventually there's no competition for Kingpin. He resurges and comes back, quote unquote, comes back to life. And then the final fight is between Daredevil and the Kingpin. So I was just thinking, like, that would have been such a cool twist to see in the game. Because, like, you're playing the whole game. I assume it's like a 24-hour game. You're playing the whole game, then right at the end, you see Kingpin, and he has this long monologue of, I was never actually dead, I faked my death. This is all planned. Now fight me. And essentially, I don't know. I just think that's so cool. I think this Daredevil game would have been sick. Now, obviously, it's for PS2, so if you go and watch the trailer, it's not going to look nearly as good as anything today. But you just have to keep in mind that it is for the PS2. Now, as for Daredevil on the next generation of consoles, on this gen of consoles, that's hard. That's because, as I said before, his radar vision is very similar to the Arkham series' detective vision. So people just say he copied it from there. It's an open world game, so obviously those are easier. It's just before the Batman Arkham games, there has not been a very good comic book video game in a long time. Now, obviously the Arkham games blew Batman out of the water. Those were so good games. And now the Insomniac Spider-Man game, we have yet to see what it's going to be, but hopefully it's going to be good. Now, I don't think you can do that with Daredevil. I don't think Daredevil is as popular of a character. I think most of his popularity, for the people that don't read comics and don't pay attention, it comes from the Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck. And people just recognize that as a bad movie. Now, obviously, Daredevil's on Netflix, but I don't know a lot of people that have watched that. And it's fantastic, and I recommend people watching it. I just don't know of a lot of people that do. So, I don't think there's going to be a Daredevil game coming out on the PS4 and the Xbox One. I don't necessarily want there to be. However, if I see a trailer and it looks super cool, I might change my tone. Just keep that in mind. That's really all I have for today. That was a lot of news. I did some research on the Daredevil, so thanks for listening. If you want to get in contact with us, you can tweet us at UPGamersPodcast. We would love to get emails from you. You can email us at underpaidgamerspodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube, Underpaid Gamers Podcast. Oh, I'm sorry. The YouTube is just Underpaid Gamers. SoundCloud is Underpaid Gamers Podcast. iTunes and Google Play are all Underpaid Gamers Podcast. So, thanks for listening. We'll see you all next time. Who knows what the topic's going to be? It's a mystery. Peace out.